All right, it is the top of the hour, whatever hour it may be when you are watching this, and this is Two on One, a weekly conversation between two theologians and another theologian about pop culture and its intersections. I am one of your co-hosts, the Reverend Arthur Stewart.
I am your other co-host. It's been a long week,
Ho,
Arthur.
hi ho.
Hello. And I'm in person. You can hear me and
Yes,
see me. I'm a
you're
real life
not
human.
you're, you're not a
I'm a
disembodied
real
form.
girl.
I am
Um,
so glad you are a real girl.
yeah, me too. But I am Stephanie Kendall, your other co-host. I can't say co-host today.
I know.
Uh, and I am glad to be back with our 2-on-1 listeners and you. I missed you.
I miss you. It's we talk about it all the time, but like this is like our weekly thing. This is how I tell time in
It
pandemic
really
and out of
is.
it. And when we
Also,
meet, yeah.
I was thinking this week as I was away last week. Y'all, if what do you want to be called? What are our viewers? What's the like? Armchair Expert has the armchairies. Like, we need something to like reference those of you that watch and listen to this show. So drop us a line in the comments. Tell us what you want to be known as, or tweet at us. We're all the places.
My vote is deuces. Like, hey deuces, and deucettes. I don't know. That's I don't want to gender anybody.
Yeah, we need something expansive.
Gender is stupid. So you had a thought. I have a thought too. Okay, and I have this thought about house cups and Hogwarts as we're doing Harry Potter month.
Let me hear it.
So the end of the first few Harry Potter books, the house cup actually matters, and with points and all that. And in the end, it's always Gryffindor, and all these red and gold paraments magically like burst out of the walls when it's announced Gryffindor won again.
Yeah, except for when Cedric Diggory died, and it was Black for Mourning. There's emotional depth in Harry Potter.
There is, and like, here's my question: is this a magical feast type thing?
Oh, I see. Like, are there house elves like making banners and things?
Yeah, or are they all from Dumbledore's mind, and therefore would they be a little like gaudy or campy? You know,
I mean, Dumbledore does have a unique sense of style.
he does, but like by design, shouldn't he have turned to an expert?
Ooh, having an expert designer and craft their liturgical textiles is really useful.
Liturgy is the work of the people, and the tactile, visual, and ambient cues we receive from our surroundings, from banners and paraments, stoles and vestments, inform that work.
Hogwarts could really use our friend Jeff Wonroe.
Hogwarts could really use our friend Jeff Wonroe.
Absolutely. If your congregation is not an imaginary wizarding school in Scotland reliant on elf labor, but instead a brick and mortar actual place wherein worship happens weekly, it may be time to step up your textile game.
Jeff Wonroe and the fine folks at Jeff Wonroe Designs create exquisite liturgical textiles for pastors, deacons, clergy, and congregations of all varieties, shapes, needs, desires, and denominations.
Ooh, yes, you can. And you can see the full catalog of all the things that Jeff Wonroe and his team creates at jeffwonroe.com. And consider, you can also have things customized. There's customization options as well.
And for friends of Two on One, the deuces, if you will, Jeff Wonroe is offering his best deal, 15% off your entire stole order when you use the code 2on1 at checkout. It is all one word. It is all letters. There are no spaces. 2on1.
Yes. Jeff Wonroe has designs and products for all seasons and needs, even liturgical face masks, which I'm still wearing. I don't know about you, but Arthur, I'm fully vaccinated, but even when I go out, I'm still wearing them just because I want to model good stewardship of health. And I'm grateful that Jeff Wonroe has thought this through and helps me do so in a way that can say I'm a disciple, or Black Lives Matter, or all the different things that I want my liturgical face mask to say.
Or it's Eastertide.
Or it's Easter, or it's just Eastertide, or it's just white and it's Eastertide, or green and ordinary time. Jeff Wonroe, JEFFWUNROW.com. Go check out all that his incredible team has to offer and use the code 2on1, all one word, for 15% off your entire stole order.
Absolutely. And Spiff, or excuse me, Stephanie, you go by Spiff, and I don't think you have a problem with it, but I try to call you Stephanie too.
You can call me Spiff, and I think our viewers know, most of them know that you call me Spiff, and they can call me Spiff too. I think most people know I don't like to be called Steph. So as long as you call me Stephanie or Spiff, I don't care.
Okay, well, Spiff, I'm excited for our guest, and I want to bring her on as soon as possible. So I'm just going to admit her from our green room. Joining us today is Carrie Taneyhill.
This is us like marching all the way to Hogwarts.
All right. Hello, Carrie. Welcome to 2-on-1. Thank you for joining us today.
Oh, thanks so much for having me, guys.
We're so excited to have you. Carrie, tell our viewers, which Arthur has just named the Deuces. We'll talk about that later. But tell our viewers a little bit about what you do, who you are, where you're located, all the things.
Sure. So my name is Carrie Taneyhill, and I'm located in Baltimore. It's absolutely beautiful here today. It's 80-something degrees. Can't complain about that. In Baltimore, that's where I'm based and actually where I'm from. So I'm a Baltimore girl, born and raised. And I am the Director of Humanitarian Assistance for Lutheran World Relief, which is headquartered here in Baltimore. It means I get to travel the world, so I can't complain. I absolutely love my job. I love what I do. But it does make it interesting to think about this topic and helping others, but also being a Slytherin at the same time.
So how did you come to grips with the fact that you're a Slytherin? I too am a Slytherin.
Okay. Oh, good. So I'm in good company.
And I'm wearing. So I'm a self-proclaimed Ravenclaw, but I try weekly to wear at least the colors of the other houses to lift up in solidarity that we're doing work together.
Well, thank you. Thank you. I obviously wear green today as well to show my house colors. I mean, I think I probably would have known from the very beginning that I was a Slytherin. I started reading Harry Potter before Pottermore was even, a thing. And I was actually a little slower to get into the books. I admit I watched the movie first before I read the first book. And then I was pretty much hooked from watching the very first movie. And then I sped read through all of the books to catch up. But I kind of knew right away that Slytherin was probably where I was going to be. I also, I've loved villains. So most girls like Disney princesses. I tend to identify more with the villains. And so that wasn't a surprise when I figured I was a Slytherin.
I love that. Arthur, how'd you find out, or how'd you figure out you were a Slytherin?
So I was insistent I was a Ravenclaw forever, and I could totally fit into Ravenclaw house, and that's fine. But honestly, every time I took the Pottermore test, it would be like, you are a Slytherin. And I'm like, I'm a Slytherclaw. And every single time I talk to folk, they'd be like, you are a Slytherin. I'm like, no, I'm not. But it is I think Slytherins are driven by outcomes, right? And I live in the future, and I'm an Enneagram 7, and I'm driven by outcomes. And I have to wrestle with selfishness versus self-sacrifice, both of which I think fit into our house. And also, I just can't live in a world where oh, you look evil, or you're from an evil family, therefore you're Slytherin, and oh, you're brave, or the right look, you must be Gryffindor. I can't do that. So I've got to. I think I'm not inherently evil. Calvinists would disagree, but that's fine. So.
I think that's part of why our vision for this, this Eastertide 2-on-1 conversation is that, bringing in different houses or people that identify in different houses to talk about how they have experienced the world of Harry Potter, and also how they experience that to inform, scripture and church and all of that work. I think has been really helpful because we don't all fit in those things. We like to typecast. We like to say all disciples are this way, all Lutherans are this way, or, whatever. And I think that especially this week, I would say, we're Slytherin, where it's like, we need a villain, right? I think to see the good, you have to also see the bad, right? You don't know what's good, sort of a thing. And I think that we kind of get away from that, knowing two people who self-identify in Slytherin and also are doing really good and faithful work. I don't know, how have you all how has that informed, I guess, your understanding? Carrie, you said you like the villains in the stories, which I really, I grapple, I like that too. I'm a big fan of the underdogs, the person you're not supposed to like. I think that informs my understanding of faith. But talk to us a little bit about that. What is your understanding of how we define evil, I guess, or the bad guy, and what it really might look like the complexities and nuances of, the human experience?
Yeah, and I think that's what's interesting about Harry Potter though too, because Harry wasn't always a good guy. He had a lot of character flaws. And when you think of like what the true hero is supposed to look like, I don't know if he necessarily fits that mold. So I think that's one of the reasons why I think Harry Potter is such an interesting story, because the characters are so nuanced and so layered. And I think that's also true with Voldemort, or he who must not be named. I don't know if we want to say his name here.
We'll name him.
But I think that's what's really interesting about him as a character too. I mean, he was so developed. J.K. Rowling could have said, well, he's just evil and he's bad. But we know his whole story and where he came from and why did he become bad, because he could have gone the other way, maybe, we don't know, if he would have been accepted by his father and shown love, and his mother would have been in a different situation than where his family came from. So I think that's what's really interesting. You could just write him off as a bad guy, as the big bad, but he really did have a lot of layers. Not that I'm excusing him from everything that he did, but I think that's what makes Harry Potter such an interesting character study, because he wasn't just the evil bad guy. There was reasoning behind why he did what he did.
Well, I always think of Maleficent in Sleeping Beauty. Like,
yep.
You could have just invited her to the baby shower, or the christening, or whatever it was. Like, what difference does it make if someone you don't like is at your daughter's christening? But maybe we have.
Isn't that how weddings work? You invite people you don't even care about.
I got married in the church I was pastoring. There were some people saw it as like a fellowship event, like honest to God brought their neighbors, and I was like, "This is why we have 4 extra tables. I hate all of you, but I don't hate all of you."
Well, and
I'm totally over it. Healthy.
Totally, it shows. No, I appreciate that you brought up that it's like not those layers, and that he was shown love, and or what that could have been. I think that for me, I always took Malfoy's relationship with Narcissa, his mom, especially in the end, as one of those guiding principles that you see that Draco isn't actually. He's been the villain for all 7 books, and at the very end, you're kind of shown like he's not, and like that the family has some interesting dynamics, but but there's go ahead.
Narcissa's question: is my son alive?
Right.
It's Draco became a Death Eater to protect his parents. His parents abandoned being Death Eaters to protect their son. We could talk about loyalty in the Slytherin house, because a few things in our conversations, Carrie, by the way, that we've kind of carried over. Is we think Gryffindor, you have to choose to be a Gryffindor because it requires a bold request. It's the only house that has that test.
I would agree with that.
My theory is that the sorting hat would never intentionally sort anybody into Gryffindor without asking. So we'd all be. That's why Harry would have been just gone into Slytherin. Like, he would have just been, but he had the courage to ask. It's why we think of Hermione as a Ravenclaw more likely, but she had we assume there was the courage to ask. Same with Ron and Hufflepuff and things like that. So that's where that theory has grown from.
And we have a holistic view of Hogwarts. Everybody in every house has some bravery, some intelligence, some loyalty.
Exactly.
I mean, I'm sure you would have. I just feel like naming this for our viewers who will be like, you're operating under the assumption, and I just want to put all the cards on the table. 3-card Monty. So here's my question about Slytherin, because I always think about this after the Battle of Hogwarts, and I will admit I've never read anything. I haven't seen the Cursed Child.
I did.
Oh, did you like it?
I hope this doesn't chase me out of the fandom on here, but I did not like it.
Because it kind of
actually didn't go back and see the second day.
Whoa.
I know. It's a hot take right now.
Oh yeah, let's have this.
I did not like it at
Good.
all. And I saw it in London on the original West End production of it.
Wow.
Yeah. Please don't send me any email, people.
You can send it to 2on1project@gmail.com and we'll delete it. This is provocative safe space.
Okay, good. Well, yeah, I did not, and I don't know if it was because the characters are are new, and I just didn't identify with them as much as I, because Ron and Harry and Hermione are my people. And so I don't know if I just didn't identify with them being older. But yeah, I was not a fan of it. I have not read it, but the actual play, did not like it.
Well, so after the first rise of Voldemort, right? There was no Truth and Reconciliation Commission in the Wizarding world. There was, oops, I was being mind controlled, and everybody's like, no, you weren't, but okay, go be a teacher at my kid's school or whatever. The second time around, like, Draco and Harry nodded each other from across the train platform 11 or 15 or 20 years later. 19, 17 years later, 19?
Yeah.
Like, how do we reconcile the fact that most Slytherins fought for Voldemort either through compulsion or family? How do you think that works out? And then the question becomes, what is the role of reconciliation in moving forward in the US, in Protestantism, in congregations?
Yeah, and I think that's a great question. To be honest, I've never even thought about it that way. Because you're so into the books and you don't even think about it. You just sort of suspend your imagination. But I think that's a really valid question, especially here in the United States with things that are happening, and that have happened since the Civil War era. I mean, it's kind of similar. You had this big, great war that happened here in the United States, and it was brother versus brother, as we all have, know and talk about it. But how did that reconciliation happen? I would say it probably didn't happen well, and is why we're in the predicament that we're in now. So yeah. Now, how did it happen in Hogwarts? I think that's a great question, and I'm not sure how they could continue on.
Also, I want to throw out a theory if I could, because I think as we talk about world service, and is it all right if we talk about Lutheran World Service and what
Yeah,
the disciples have as Week of Compassion and our global ministries type stuff? And Spiff, please jump in and be like, what are you doing?
No, you're good. I Carrie's work is really cool, and I think it's really applicable to the work that well, first of all, it's necessary right now. It's always been necessary, but I think right now in these kind of more tumultuous times that we find ourselves in, I assume, Carrie, that your work is a lot and probably really life-giving. And I had the same, when we seek to help beyond those that we consider our own. And I saw that a lot. You see that a lot in the Battle of Hogwarts, right? Like, how do you prepare yourself to reach out beyond what you are comfortable with? How do you kind of change your mindset? And when people don't, how do you reconcile that as well? And so I'm wondering how your work has affected your understanding of what it means to help and serve and be beyond our own houses, our own comfort level, our own churches. So
yeah, and now I will say my work is very much international focused, which is interesting in and of itself, because a lot of people would say, well, there's a lot of work to be done here in the United States, which is very, very true. And there's a lot of amazing organizations out there that do work great here in our own backyards. And so that's one of the things we always say when our constituents ask about that. There's plenty of need to go around. There is not, we're not saying that people overseas are more in need than people here in the United States. That is not the case. We specialize in overseas humanitarian assistance. And so I think that's, yeah, absolutely. The need is great, especially as like the hurricane season last year was intense. And the hurricane season for 2021 is unfortunately supposed to be even worse, which is very hard to believe because we reached the Greek alphabet with the name storms. So it's really hard to think about how it could even possibly get any worse. But that's why people like me have to be around to, number one, assist people as things are occurring and as humanitarian crises come up. But also to be able to help them respond to a future shock. So the people we're helping in Honduras who were affected by the hurricanes there in November. We're hoping to help them not only rebuild from those storms, but help them build back better for the future as well.
So I'm going to guess and not guess. I'm going to ask and then be corrected if I'm wrong, or affirmed if I'm right. Is part of your work going to congregations and saying this is what your contribution to Lutheran World Service does?
Yes.
So I've got the Slytherin question for it. How do we distinguish and how do we promote the difference between self-protection, or the difference or the connection between self-protection and self-sacrifice? Because if I had to argue it, Slytherins are the people who are most selfish. And I don't mean selfish always in a bad ways, but self-involved. I don't know. They're all bad words for it.
Yes. And I admit I am very selfish and self-involved, which again makes my work very interesting, because, I'm going out there and I'm putting myself in harm's way to be able to help others. But I think that kind of goes back to our other point that we were making before. Just because you are a self-identified or a Pottermore identified Slytherin, I don't think that means that you're not brave or you don't have courage or some of the qualities of the other houses. So I don't think that self-promotion or self-sacrifice is necessarily a bad thing, especially in cases like, some of the countries where I visit, where you actually need to be smart and remove yourself from harm's way. Just, you don't want to go out there and risk, being kidnapped or
that's not effective ministry. Yeah.
Robbed, or, if I'm hurt, then I can't do my job and then people can't get helped. So I think that's where you have to be smart and preserve yourself enough to remove yourself from a bad situation if that does come up.
And I as you were just talking, it makes sense why, like, a Slytherin. So one of the words that people use for Slytherins is cunning, and I think that that's a really cool word and an underused kind of value for people, because I can imagine you being really good at your job and being relational and saying I talked to this dude over here, I talked to this lady over here, whatever. And then all of a sudden something comes up and you're like, wait a minute, he just said, and being able, like, the cunningness to be able to make connections where maybe there weren't, and to kind of see the possibility of something that has been written off as one thing when you can see it as something else. And I think that Slytherins have a unique ability to do that in a way that helps build up the whole, when they're in their best, and they're in their best practices.
They're not plotting to take over the world. Just call it what it is.
Yeah, when they're not trying, when it's not just for them, when it's lifting the whole, that cunningness is something that is generally lifted as unique to Slytherin in a way, because I think the Slytherins we know have used it with malintent, but what it really is doing is saying, giving something hope that we have said is hopeless. Yeah, and do you experience that in that way? Has your Slytherinness been helpful in that?
Oh, absolutely. And I think that is an essential part of my job, because part of, when I get deployed to respond to an emergency or a humanitarian crisis, the whole point is to go and to talk to people, because you need to figure out what are the needs on the ground. Now, when something happens, there's a ton of needs. People might need water, they might need shelter, they need food, they need medicine, they need a whole laundry list of items. We can't help everybody with everything. And so trying to figure out, we have this X number of resources, here's how many people we can help if we do this and this from their list. Because we know this organization is helping with health, and this organization is doing water, and this organization is helping with protection. So Lutheran World Relief can assist with food delivery, and we can do shelter repair. So kind of zooming out, understanding what the big picture is, and being able to decipher what people are saying they need versus what they actually need and what can we support. So I think that's kind of an important distinction there.
Okay. I'm sorry, I got to jump back onto Slytherin embodies hope, because it makes sense, right? Because that's ambitious, that's cunning, I'm sorry, that really has messed me up a little bit, and I want to unpack it. And I apologize, because I just have to sit with this for a second, but I'm still going to talk, so we don't have dead air.
I've thought about this for a while. I think that there's something, and I think maybe Carrie, maybe you agree with this, but like I think that's why I was always drawn to the underdogs, to the villains, because like I want to see that I have hope in them, and I have hope that that there is, as people that operate in the currency of grace, I think that there is I have to kind of assume that there is hope present in each of these people, even if they are the very worst. And so for me, that cunningness in Slytherin house, I was always really hopeful for that house. That house has the possibility to do incredible and great things. And so, and that has informed my own ministry on how I see people that maybe disagree with me, maybe, or that I have or an issue kind of, getting to the same reconciling space, that my prayer is always for hope, and or a cunningness that can help me relate to them in a way that connects us. Yeah,
I see a lot of Slytherin in you, Spiff, and I don't mean it in a bad way, because it's
take
not
it
a bad thing to be Slytherin.
I said that I'm a Slitherclaw. I'm just more Ravenclaw. All the Pottermore things I've ever taken is Ravenclaw, so it felt right. So that's where I am.
You know what? I'm going to encourage people today. I have a couple things for our listeners or our viewers, for the deuces. Okay. Deuces. Number one, what are the spiritual practices, the spiritual gifts of each house? That is, what do Gryffindor, Ravenclaw, and Hufflepuff have equivalent to Slytherin? Number two, dear deuces, do you agree or disagree that just like one's Enneagram number, online tests are great, Pottermore is fine, but really it's the house you identify with that you land on, that you choose your number, you choose your house? Let us know in the comments, send us an email, drop us a line. And Carrie, if either of those questions interest you, I hate to ask it because we always do. Do you happen to, actually, you're a millennial in the church. What's your Enneagram number?
I know, of course, I know my Enneagram. I'm a number 3, which probably shouldn't be surprising, because I think that really sums up a Slytherin. I'm a true achiever. I mean, it's so strong. Like I don't even really go into any of the other numbers, maybe a tiny bit into 2, because I do want to help people, and that's kind of why I'm in the work that I do. But I'm very much a perfectionist and an achiever. Absolutely.
So welcome to this team. I too I'm a 3 with a 4 wing, and we've come up for whatever reason. So Arthur's a 7, and this is our power triad.
Yes, whenever there's 3 aggressive numbers, there Jesus is among us going, no, let me talk. Let me talk. So let's, I guess I have an ethical question. It's all ethics nowadays. And by the way, it is so frustrating that we've had these moments. I don't really like Harry Potter as a character, but realizing he was a child of trauma, and as a person who practices trauma-informed parenting, it's frustrating to me that I have to love him now. We talked about Dobby last week because I did not like Dobby until the words "he was free" were said, and like freedom and Galatians are running through my mind with that stupid house elf. So if Slytherins are centered in self, and self is inescapable for all of us, service for others, it feels good to give. It feels good to serve, or even, I guess my question is, there are some people I've motivated to serve. We have motivated to serve in the church by saying it's good for you to do this for others. It's not necessarily love others. It's love yourself enough to love others. Mm-hmm. Does that count?
I think it absolutely does.
Oh, good. Me too.
Yes. I mean, I don't think, I think number one, self-love is very, very important, being a millennial. And I think that's very important to what we like to talk about. Especially I'm also a parent as well. So having time to love yourself again and make sure you don't lose yourself in becoming, an overseer of little people, and trying to bring them up into the world. So I don't think that, the idea of loving yourself, and then that way you can therefore help others. I think that's okay. I think it's okay to admit it, that if you're in helping somebody for a selfish reason, that's okay. But guess what? You're helping somebody at the end of the day. Somebody is benefiting, hopefully, from what you're doing. And I think that's, as long as you're smart about it. And, again, in my work, that's really, really important. We have standards in place, and we have, safeguards for the people that we're helping. So people aren't just going in there because they want to feel good about something. We have to make sure that we're doing it in a way that protects those who are on the recipient end of things. But I think, if you're helping somebody at the end of the day and it makes you feel better, wonderful.
Spiff, as the non-Slytherin?
Do I think that it's okay to help out of selfish reasons? Is that the question?
Yeah.
Yeah, I do.
Good.
I don't always think help is help, because I think part of what growing up in the 80s and kind of like buy a tree, save a rainforest, like do the things that you want. It lacked nuance and understanding that what you think is helpful may not actually be helpful. So I think that if you're going to act on selfish reasons, that's okay. But I still encourage you to listen first before, and figure out what the actual need is. Work with organizations such as Carrie's that do, like if you're like, I've got this extra money and I really want to, tell people that I'm giving someplace, great, give your money to wherever it is, right? But if you have all this extra money, don't just fly yourself to a different place because you think what is best. That's where I want to like nuance of being like, yes, it is in a self, like if you to act on selfish motives still helps someone, and that's it's a slippery slope there, but leave it to professionals to listen to what people who say what they need, or trust people enough to know what they need for themselves, and then support the organizations doing that work.
You grew up in the 80s? Yeah. Who was president?
I'm not, listen, come the end of July, we can go back to a Ted Lasso conversation.
Oh, come on. I was gonna Doc Brown you. The other thing is so with missions, having done mission trips where I've taken a bus full of middle school kids to do any sort of renovation work, it was a mistake. What we're doing now with our youth group is we're investing in Finca, which does microloans in the 2/3 world. And it's great because the kids are like, wow, we've raised $200. And I'm like, and that means we're making like 8 loans, or we're providing money for 8 loans. We're not doing the loaning because that would be dumb. We're also going to do a little fundraiser for Lutheran World Service as a thank you, Carrie, because I appreciate you spending your time with us. But yes, it's the mission trips. What is it? Voluntourism?
Volunteerism, which we saw so much of that coming out of Hurricane Dorian in the Bahamas. I can tell you that was one of the most frustrating responses I've ever been a part of, because there were just planefuls of people coming there with amazing intentions, great intentions.
There's a brand new superhighway to hell paved with those good intentions.
Yeah, I mean, seriously, like, you're taking jobs away from local people who are skilled carpenters who we can pay to do those tasks. And so, yeah, I know a lot about voluntourism.
So what if I like that you're a Slytherin, and I like that you're a 3, because I feel like you'd be able to say to folk, send your money, pick up trash around your neighborhood.
Yes.
Well, and so I have a question for that, and it can couch it in Harry Potter, so book 4 you get Durmstrang, and you get the other schools, and Pottermore has told us about schools, there's global wizarding schools, and that sparks my own curiosity of who's there, who's leading them, who is the Dumbledore of Ilvermorny or something like that. So where do you draw the line of curiosity and and wanting to go to experience, and that kind of tourism, that cultural appropriation, the voluntourism? What is that line for you?
I think that's a really great question, and I think it's absolutely, curiosity is amazing. We want to encourage people to go and have experiences, because then they can relate to the world better when they come back from those mission types of trips. And I don't want to say all mission trips are bad at all. That's not what I'm saying. I think where the line, I would draw the line, is after an emergency. So something happens and you're rushing to the scene. Don't let the pair, like if you're watching if you saw a car accident, you can rush to the scene and you can call 911 and let the professionals get in there and resuscitate the person or cut them out of the car and save their life, rather than you attempting to do that with a pocket knife. That's kind of how I would more equate it. That's I think experiences are wonderful, and that's how I got. I've loved travel since I started traveling in high school. And so I think that stuff is wonderful. But just, you have to be really careful when it comes to an emergency situation. And that's really when you have to leave it to the professionals who are experienced, who know what they're doing, and give your cash to them, because that's really what's going to be able to allow us to do our work, because cash is much better than sending a container full of equipment that you've collected locally to clog up the ports when we're trying to get medicines in, or equipment to move debris around. So that's kind of when the slope kind of goes the other way, where those intentions, which are still great and they're amazing, they become unhelpful.
So I have a theory.
Uh-oh.
Bingo card, get ready. So I have a theory. The American church, the American Protestant church, and maybe the American mainline church, but I'm going to throw in the evangelicals in there too, because whatever, we're all one body. They are essentially Horace Slughorn. Or like, and I'm pulling this in there. Follow me along on this. The American Protestant church is Slytherin. It's Slughorn. It's okay. Of course I can do this, but I don't really want to, and I'm going to do things on my own terms, and I'll do what's right, but I have to be harassed by people to do it. And even then, I'm going to bring back my old school ethics and not really know what I'm doing. I don't know. I want us to pivot to Slughorn. And I think if we put it in the context of missions, this lines up. Or am I insane? I could be insane. That's fine. The faculty at Hogwarts, Snape is the only Slytherin on staff, apparently. There's no other Slytherins, right?
Slughorn was a Slytherin.
Slughorn in book 6, but up until that point, there's one Slytherin, and there's like 9 Hufflepuffs and Ravenclaws, right? And and they leave it to Snape, who Dumbledore knows is unhinged. Like he's grieving, and he's never been allowed to publicly mourn, and he's also just, you can tell he listens to The Cure by himself in his chambers, and so they bring in Slughorn, and Slughorn is almost a Gryffindor, just like they had Gilderoy Lockhart, who is almost a Slytherin.
Mm-hmm.
Nice balance. J.K. Rowling, still don't like TERFs. Please stop being a TERF. I see Slughorn as the American church, right? He'll do the right thing, but by God, it will cost you to ask him, and by God, it will cost him to do it. Is that fair, or is that totally unrighteous?
Yeah, I mean,
you can say it's everyone but the Lutherans. It's okay.
I mean, of course, I'm not Lutheran, but I think I get what you're saying, because I think this kind of goes back to what we were talking about before with, is it okay to do things for selfish reasons? You know, you can help somebody for a selfish reason. And so I get what you're saying, and I see it. But that's just could be the Slytherin, you know, our Slytherin brains working.
Yeah, I see it. I don't know that I would have. I mean, in all honesty, I think this is the first I'm hearing about it, obviously, and so I'll 1000% think about this tonight and be like, yes, and or no, you know. But there's something there in that, you know, the church is always present. Slughorn was always around. Why now are we asking why, you know, like, why did he get brought in for a certain thing, like, you know, and then the whole turning into a chair and all, you know, he's gonna hide away, he's gonna run away from his call. It's a little, you know, I don't know. Yes and no. I can see certain points of the Protestant church or of the church at large being a Slughorn. Yeah.
Okay.
But I also see the church being like a McGonagall and its ability to shapeshift and move and kind of cast a vision forward. And I think that it's just given in time, and maybe it's local church that I'm more hopeful for in that space, but I don't know.
I like it. That was a very half-formed question.
And you got a real half-baked answer. So.
I have this weird dream that someday, like in a few seasons, I'm going to have a big sketchbook full of questions that I've meticulously written out, and Spiff is not going to have taken notes forever because it's a complete inverse of how we started. Right now, we're in the in-between. We're in the liminal space.
I like the in-between. But one of the things I wanted to kind of bring up for those of you that are Slytherins, because there's an assumption, right? And the first thing, asking someone their Hogwarts house is very much like asking them their Enneagram number. It's in the vernacular. It's very much like, who are you, you know? And the minute you say that you are a Slytherin, you're already kind of subverting the norm, because you're not meant to want to do that. And then whether or not you act like what they assume a Slytherin should be, or you act kind of in a different way, there's a little bit of like kind of cultural whiplash to that, right? Like when you subvert that. And so I'm wondering if that subversive understanding of your own self-identity, and I'm asking both of you who are Slytherins, if that helps us kind of deconstruct structures and or people within the church who we have said, oh, you know, that old person over there, you know, they may not, you know, we may have to help them a little bit more with tech. And then all of a sudden they're like, have you seen this TikTok or what, you know, like really kind of that whiplash. Have you guys experienced that when you are in these self-identified spaces? And what can the church learn from kind of subverting those monolithic ideas of who a person is or should be because of their belongings?
It's good.
Would you like me to take that on first? Yeah. So how I'm thinking about it in this space that I'm operating in, and I think that's one of the reasons why it's really important for us to involve our project participants in the actual designing of these projects that we're doing. So we don't want to come in and say, well, you clearly, you know, need this, this, and this, and I'm going to build you a shelter because it looks like this, and this is exactly what you need. We have no idea, really. You know, I'm an American, you know, 35-year-old from Baltimore, Maryland. I have absolutely no idea what a cacao farmer in Honduras could possibly need. They're the ones who have to tell me these things.
Thank you for being an American who will admit that.
You're welcome. So I think that's why it's really important not to write people off and to say, well, I'm just going to make an assumption about you, because like what you were saying, the example of the older person, you know, you could possibly not even know how to open up a PDF or use a printer. I struggle with my own printer. So, you know, I think that's why it's important not to make those snap judgments. And maybe that's where my cunning side kind of comes in with, you know, observing and trying to figure things out and let them unfold, sometimes for self-preservation purposes. But in order, you know, I think that piece is kind of important, and that's kind of how I'm thinking about it. You can't go in and say, write people off. You need to get to know them a little bit more, allow them to show what they either need or their true colors, or what are their skill sets, in order to figure out before you can just make an assumption. Now, we're human, and you have to make snap judgments on people. That's what we do. It's human nature. And so I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing either, but trying to be a little bit more purposeful about it, I guess.
I love that. It's the purposeful it's purposeful derailing. So Severus Snape, we don't type real people, but we absolutely type fictional characters. Snape is a 4 with a massive 3-wing, right? Because his potions textbook, where he had shortcuts for every single potion and he was able to do them well and right, he probably intrinsically saw the path and he took it. I'm just going to guess that. Like I almost say he's a 3-4. Like, I don't know, or 3 with a major 4-wing. Spiff, you're Severus Snape. Or he is.
Listen, I'll take it. That's 1,000. My favorite. Sirius Black is
Mr. Potter. Sorry.
Sirius Black is my favorite character, and I also think he's a 3 with a 4-wing. So
okay, but so Snape does that, and that's going to disrupt the normativity of how things are, because you have the ingredients, you have the potion, and he's like, oh, made it better. Gonna have to catch up with me. Are either of you familiar with the cube rule?
No.
Okay, so I will not go too far on this, but I wrote a newsletter article about it today, and it's still in my brain. So the argument is a hot dog, a sandwich, because it's a banh mi is meat on a split bun with sauces and pickled vegetables. So too is a hot dog. Is it or is it not? The cube rule says it's not about what the bread is. The cube rule is about where the starches are. So if it's on the bottom, it is a toast, but that means pumpkin pie is a toast. If it's, on 2 sides and on the bottom, it is a taco, which means that, for example, a piece of pie on its side is a taco. It's supposed to be dumb. It's supposed to be frustrating. A bread bowl of soup is technically a quiche. Like it's dumb and it's wonderful. Cuberule.com. It's funny. But the person who made the cube rule is a Slytherin. Because there's an intentional chaos, and that chaos, when it's not checked, can become an intentional adversarial nature. I bet you 10-1, Carrie, that you and I can sometimes get really adversarial with people really fast.
Of course, yes.
Because they deserve it.
Yes.
But they don't deserve it, right? And right. And that's also knowing self well enough to keep some of those baser impulses in check. And we're going to get Ravenclaws who are like, I too have eviscerated strangers, but only in my mind. And I'm going to be like, good for you.
I was like, I tend to just lay people out in the shower. Like my shower arguments are strong, and I get so terrified to do it in real life. Yeah. Sometimes. So it depends on the situation. It depends on the person. So.
Do you have a specific shower enemy or many shower enemies?
I have many shower enemies.
See, I have one at a time.
How about one at a time. Mine's a focused of like, it depends on what's happening in my life at that time and day. It's like there's one shower, but they span decades.
Did it just get weird, Carrie?
No, because I'm personally trying to think about who is my shower enemy, and I'm thinking, I actually just mostly think about myself in the shower. And like being a true Slytherin, like, oh, what do I need to do? Or, I don't know if I necessarily have a shower enemy.
Perhaps you are your own shower enemy.
Maybe I am. Yeah, maybe I am my own shower enemy.
This took a turn.
This is weird, and I love it. And it's great. And also do note, Slytherin house lines up with the 4 elements with water. So talking about shower enemies, actually kind of appropriate.
Well, there you go. I don't know.
I do want to be cognizant of our time together, and I want to make sure that we keep things in the one Instagram block type thing, and that's really why we keep it to an hour. Except when we went for like 3 hours with Quadri Harris on Black Panther, and we still like barely scratched. Anyways, Carrie, it is great to have you here with us today. It is marvelous. This is just fun, and I love it. We have a final question that we ask all of our guests, and Spiff phrases it so beautifully, and I rarely do.
And now will be the day that I, really screw it up. But Carrie, thank you so much for being on. It was,
thank you.
It's one of those things where like we have those people where, you and I, and I don't think you've ever met Arthur, but we've never met each other, and yet we feel like old friends. This is a really wonderful conversation of just, kind of being together. So thank you for coming. We hope you will come back.
Yeah.
So what biblical character, story, theme, narration, whatever, are you most reminded of in Harry Potter?
Yes. So I mean, I think the theme probably, and I don't know what others have answered who have been posed this question. I mean, to me, I think the theme really is obviously this good versus evil, but it doesn't have, but again, it's layered, it's nuanced. Just because a character, there's several examples that where characters are inherently supposed to be bad and the evil ones, but it's not necessarily, so because they have a reasoning behind that. Or there's nuances to how interpretations are done with those characters, and we can interpret the Bible lots of different ways with the various stories and characters in it. So to me, that's kind of the big theme. And then I would say the character, when I think of typical Harry Potter, it really is the David versus Goliath. I would say, you have Harry, who is, he's only a boy and he's small and underestimated, and no one would ever think that he could possibly take down Voldemort, the most evil wizard that ever lived. And he has this, Voldemort has an entire army behind him, and what does Harry have? He has a couple of friends who happen to be really smart and intelligent, and so he would be underestimated. And so that's kind of the biblical story that comes to my mind first, of somebody who is small and underestimated, but ends up triumphing in the end through some assistance from others. And I think that's really important. It wasn't just Harry who did it. He had a lot of help from a lot of different people who were cheering him on. But in the end, I mean, he really did have to sacrifice himself in order to beat Voldemort.
I like that, especially because I think I dislike King David in the same way I dislike Harry Potter. I'm sorry. I'm gonna go ahead and go though, because I'm gonna throw out there with Slytherin particularly. I'm gonna name James and John, sons of Zebedee, sons of Thunder, because James and John are super ambitious. They're like, hey, who gets to sit at your right hand? Is it us? It's us, right? That's cool. We already put duct tape with our names on the back of the chairs, so like. And also when they go through Samaria, or they can't go through Samaria, and they're like, you should call down thunder. And Jesus is like, have you listened to a word I've said? And they're like, fastest way through, eviscerate your enemies. Come on. Like, I want to get off this horse, or I want to stop walking. Spiff.
Yeah. So Arthur helped me with this one. I'm gonna go with Ehud, because I think that there's something to this kind of left-handed leadership, and understanding that this leader who is different, a leader who is seen maybe as troublesome or evil or cunning, because there is an unexplained and unknown truth about him in that space, is kind of what I understand Slytherin to be about. That there is a cunningness, an unknown tapped resource, a hope, a space of vision that we overlook because we only focus on this one unknown thing about them, being that we know that they are evil, but we don't even know how they're going to be evil to us, right? There's this presumed evil, and so that was kind of where I went with that one.
And I like that he locked the door behind him after he kills Ehud. That is a total Slytherin move. Because then the guards are like, he's been in there a while. Yeah, but do you really want to deal with Eglon? Like, if you interrupt him? No, okay. And they wait another half an hour, and he's halfway across the country.
Yep.
Carrie, this has really been a true honor. I'm going to share our promo from our sponsor, Jeff Wunrow Designs, because that's what we do at the end of episodes. And we want to make clear to everyone that Jeff Wunrow, JEFFWUNROW.com, is where you can find liturgical textiles, vestments, paraments, banners, stoles. And don't forget our stole code, 2-on-1, all one word, for 15% off your stole order.
Yes. I just bought one, so I'm really excited. And I saw so many of our friends who are like, this week is their last week of classes. I know that in the Southwest region, we got some beloveds taking their final ordination or having their final ordination interviews. And so if you have a loved one that is graduating and or getting ordained this summer or whatever, make sure you check out Jeff Wunrow Stoles and use our code 2-on-1 at checkout.
Carrie, thank you.
Thank you, guys.
We're wrapping up with Hogwarts next week, right?
We are. So we meant to do it in the month of April. I know. We need to do a Home Alone episode. Yeah. We had talked about the April being in our Eastertide, the Boy Who Lived, that we were doing all 4 Wednesdays in April as, Harry Potter and Hogwarts houses, but we postponed the week of Ravenclaw with Charles Anthony Bryant. But we will be back next week with Charles Anthony Bryant, which is very exciting. I love him.
I literally love everything about Charles Anthony Bryant.
He is delightful,
Carrie,
and he is a Ravenclaw.
Oh yes.
So next week it'll be 2 Ravenclaws on 1 Slytherin rather than this 2 Slytherins on 1 Ravenclaw.
Carrie, you won't even believe what I say about you when you come back, which we hope you'll do. But that does wrap up our time today. Thank you very much for joining us, Carrie and Spiff. It's good to see you as always. Please make sure you subscribe on literally any platform to 2-on-1. And
share, subscribe, like, do it all.
Yes. Ooh, definitely share. Tell your enemies about us. Reverse psychology. Total Slytherin move. Goodbye, everybody. Thank you.